in the harsh and unforgiving landscape of the Wild West, where the land stretched endlessly under the hot sun and the cold nights bit at your bones, there was a rancher named Thomas Hale. He was a man who had lived much of his life in solitude, his only company being the cattle he raised and the vast open plains that surrounded him. He had come to this land seeking something, perhaps a fresh start or simply a place to call his own after the loss of his wife, who had died from a fever several years before. The land had never been kind to him, and though he had worked hard, it had always felt as though it wanted to take something from him, whether it was his crops, his cattle, or even his spirit. Thomas wasn't a man of superstition. He didn't believe in tales told around campfires or the strange rituals that some of the nearby Native American tribes practiced. The ranchers in the area often whispered about the old customs of the tribes, claiming that these rituals held great power. Some of the ranchers even spoke of ceremonies where the land was blessed and protection was granted, in return for a small but meaningful sacrifice. Thomas had always dismissed such stories as mere folklore, nothing more than fables to scare the weak-minded. But one evening everything changed. Thomas had just finished a long day of work when he noticed a figure in the distance standing by the edge of his ranch. She was a woman, her silhouette outlined against the setting sun. He had seen her before. Alia, a woman from one of the nearby tribes. She had lived in the area for as long as anyone could remember. She was a quiet woman, known for her wisdom and deep connection with the land. Thomas had never spoken much to her, as he believed that their lives were worlds apart. She lived her way and he lived his, but on this particular evening, something about her presence felt different. She wasn't just passing by as she often did, offering a polite nod. This time there was something in her eyes, a sense of urgency perhaps, or a warning. "Thomas Hale," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I need to speak with you." He was taken aback by her directness, but he nodded and walked toward her. "What brings you here?" he asked. "I've come to talk about the land," she said, her gaze steady and piercing. Thomas had heard enough stories about the land, about its strange power and the rituals that were said to protect those who lived on it. But he had never paid much attention to such talk. He believed in hard work and sweat, but Alia's serious tone made him hesitate for the first time. "I know you've heard the stories," Alia continued, sensing his doubt. "You've heard about the old rituals, the ones that bring protection to those who honor the land. But you don't believe them, do you?" Thomas shifted uneasily, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've heard the tales, but I've never seen any proof. The land isn't something you can tame with a few rituals or blessings." Alia's eyes softened and she took a step closer. "It's not about taming the land. It's about understanding it, respecting it. The land has a spirit just like the people who live here. Those who learn to listen to it are granted protection, while those who ignore it often suffer." Thomas didn't know what to make of her words. He wasn't a man who liked to show weakness or doubt, especially to someone he barely knew. Yet, for some reason, Alia's presence made him listen more closely than he ever had before. "I don't have much faith in those things," Thomas said slowly, "but I've heard you're one of the few who still follows these rituals. What exactly are you asking me to do?" Alia looked down at the ground for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she looked up again, her expression was calm but firm. "There is a ritual," she said, "one that can protect you and your land. It is an ancient practice that has been passed down through my people for generations. If you want to stay here, if you want to truly belong to this land, you must take part in it." Thomas frowned, still unsure about what she was suggesting. "And what exactly does this ritual involve?" Alia hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. "It requires you to give something of yourself, something personal. It's not just about the land. It's about your connection to it. You will be tested, and it will challenge you in ways you can't imagine. But if you complete the ritual, the land will offer you its blessing." "Blessing?" Thomas echoed, skeptical. "Yes," Alia said quietly. "Protection, prosperity, and peace. The land will take care of you as long as you take care of it." Thomas couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. He had spent years trying to make the land work for him, but it had never truly been kind. The idea of receiving a blessing, protection even, sounded appealing, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than Alia was telling him. "Why me?" he asked. "Why now? I've been living here for years and I've never had to do anything like this before." Alia's gaze remained steady. "The land chooses when the time is right, and it has chosen you." Thomas was silent for a long moment, He thought about the droughts that had nearly ruined his crops, the diseases that had wiped out his cattle, and the loneliness that seemed to surround him no matter how hard he worked. He had always blamed the land for his hardships, but now for the first time he wondered if the land might hold something he had never considered, something that could change his life. "I'll think about it," Thomas said finally, though he wasn't sure if he truly believed in the ritual. But there was something about Alya's words that made him pause. Maybe he had been too stubborn, too set in his ways. Maybe, just maybe, this ritual was the answer to the unspoken question that had haunted him for years. "How can I make this land mine?" Alya nodded as if she had expected his response. "You have until the next full moon to decide. But remember, the land doesn't wait for anyone." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Thomas to ponder what he had just been told. He stood there for a long while, looking out over his ranch, the wide-open plains stretching in all directions. The land seemed the same as always, barren, unforgiving, and wild. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Thomas wondered if maybe there was more to the land than he had realized. The days leading up to the full moon passed by in a blur. Thomas had spent hours pacing his ranch, his mind never fully at ease. The land seemed to weigh heavier on him, as though it could sense his uncertainty. He couldn't shake Alya's words from his mind. The land chooses when the time is right. But did the land really choose him? He had spent so many years trying to survive here. He had fought against the droughts, the storms, and the animals that roamed the plains. Could a simple ritual really change everything? Or was this all just another wild tale? Another superstition he was too stubborn to let go of? His curiosity grew, but so did his skepticism. Every part of him wanted to dismiss the idea, to go back to his old ways, working hard and expecting nothing in return. But then at night, when the winds howled across the plains and the silence of the desert pressed in on him, Thomas felt something stir within himself. He had tried to control the land for years, but maybe it was time to try something different. The night of the full moon arrived. Thomas had decided that he would go through with the ritual, though he still wasn't sure what to expect. He gathered a few belongings, packed his gear, and rode his horse out to the place where Alya had told him to meet. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a cold light across the plains. It was as if the world around him was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Alya was already there, standing by the creek, her figure outlined by the moonlight. Her presence was calm, serene even, and there was no sign of hesitation in her eyes. She had been waiting for this moment, and she seemed to know exactly what needed to happen. "Thomas?" Alya greeted him with a soft nod. "You've come?" "I have," he replied, trying to sound confident. His heart raced, and the doubt that had been gnawing at him all week started to creep back in. "I don't know if this will work, Alya. I've never believed in this sort of thing." Alya smiled gently, understanding his uncertainty. "It's not about belief, Thomas. It's about surrendering to the land, letting go of what you think you know and embracing what it has to offer." Thomas nodded, though he still didn't fully understand. He looked around, noticing the elders standing in a circle nearby. They were all silent, watching him with intense eyes. Some were older, their faces lined with the wisdom of years, while others were younger, but all of them carried a sense of quiet strength. Alya gestured for Thomas to join the circle. As he stepped forward, he felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. The air was thick with anticipation, and he realized that the ritual was not just about him. It was about something much larger, something that tied him to the land and to the people who had lived here for generations. "Tonight, you will give something of yourself," Alya explained. "A part of you that you have been holding on to, something that stands between you and the land. You must let go of it. Only then can the land accept you." Thomas looked at her, his heart pounding. "And what happens if I don't?" Alya's eyes were steady. "Then you will never truly belong here. The land will remain wild and untamed, just as you have always seen it. But if you give yourself to it, if you surrender, it will give you something in return." Thomas hesitated. He had always been a man who relied on his strength and his willpower. He had built his ranch from the ground up, fought for every inch of land, and never once considered that there might be something more to it than hard work. The idea of surrendering, of letting go of that control, was frightening to him. But Alya's words rang in his ears. "It's not about taming the land. It's about understanding it." Taking a deep breath, Thomas finally stepped into the center of the circle. The elders began to chant softly, their voices blending together in a rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. Alia stood beside him, her presence a calming force. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Thomas nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and anticipation. This was it, the moment when he had to choose whether to stay as he was, a man alone in the wilderness, or to embrace something unknown, something that might change everything. Alia reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then begin. Let go of your pride. Let go of the walls you've built around your heart." Thomas closed his eyes. For a moment he felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. The land beneath him seemed to hum with life, and the wind whispered through the trees. It was as if the earth itself was inviting him to be part of something greater, something older than he could understand. He reached for the jacket he wore, the same jacket that had been with him through every trial and tribulation. It had become more than just clothing. It had become a symbol of his struggles, his determination to survive. But now, in this moment, it felt heavy, like a burden he no longer needed to carry. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he unbuttoned the jacket and slipped it off. The wind caught it as it fell to the ground, and for a moment Thomas stood there feeling exposed, vulnerable. But as he stood in the moonlight, something shifted inside him. It wasn't just the physical weight of the jacket that had lifted. It was the weight of years spent fighting the land, fighting life itself, always believing that he had to do everything on his own. As he stood there, bare-chested, the cool night air brushing against his skin, he felt a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly connected to the land, not as a conqueror, but as a part of it. His breath slowed and his heart began to steady. The chanting of the elders grew louder, filling the air with a deep, resonating sound. It felt as if the land itself was responding to his act of surrender. The wind shifted and the trees rustled, their branches swaying in a way that felt almost like a greeting. Alia stepped forward and placed her hands on his chest, her touch gentle but firm. "You have let go, Thomas. Now the land accepts you." For a moment, everything was still. Thomas felt a deep, overwhelming connection to the earth beneath his feet, the sky above him, and the people around him. It was as if he had become part of something much larger than himself, a force that had been there long before him and would remain long after he was gone. Alia smiled, her eyes shining with something close to pride. "You have done it," she said softly. "You are now part of the land. It will protect you just as you have protected it." Thomas stood there for a long moment, taking in the weight of her words. He felt the land's presence in a way he never had before, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. He wasn't just a man trying to survive in a harsh world. He was a part of the world itself, connected to it in a way that was beyond explanation. As the ritual came to an end, Thomas felt a sense of peace settle over him, one that he had never known before. He had let go of his pride, and in doing so he had found something far more valuable than protection or prosperity. He had found belonging. The moon shone brightly above, and as Thomas looked around at the faces of the elders and Alia, he knew that his life would never be the same. He had broken the ritual, but in doing so he had finally become a part of the land he had always tried to control. As he made his way back to his ranch that night, he could feel the land beneath his feet, steady and strong, and for the first time in years he felt at home.